Indie Pistol Training and 812 Guns have decided to collaborate to bring you a video on how to disassemble, clean, and lubricate a Springfield XD pistol. For today's example, we'll be using an XDS. This is going to be the subcompact, single-stacked 45 ACP version of the XD. Before we get started, let's go over a checklist of what you'll need to disassemble, clean, and lubricate your pistol. First thing you'll need is cleaning solvent. Today we're using some Hops number 9. Next, we've got a cleaning rod, an old toothbrush, a bore brush, a slotted jag, some cleaning patches, Q-tips, and a rag. The rag is just an old cotton t-shirt that we've cut a piece out of to use. We've also got Slip 2000 EWL that we're using as a lubricant. Before we get started, we'll clear the pistol. In other words, we'll make sure that there is no live ammunition in the pistol at all. Today, for illustration purposes, we'll be using an orange training round. This is a solid piece of plastic with no gunpowder and no primer in it. It's used for training purposes and also for illustration purposes. The first thing we'll do is clear the pistol. To clear the pistol, the first step will be removing the source of ammunition, which will be the magazine. To remove the magazine, you're going to press down on the magazine release button located either on the right side or on the left side. Both will accomplish the same thing. I can push on the left side, the magazine will release, or I can push on the right side and the magazine will release. I'll remove the magazine, I'll set it off to the side. At that point, I want to lock the slide back. To do so, on some of the XD models, you need to make sure that the grip safety is depressed. While depressing the grip safety, you have to push up on the slide lock lever, which is here, and by up I mean towards the top of the slide. So what I'll do is I'll take a firing grip on the pistol, I'll alter it slightly, enough so that my palm still comes in contact with the grip safety here, and my thumb has a little more room to work on the slide lock itself. At that point, I'll take the palm heel of my hand and the touch pads of my fingers and put them on the slide serrations on the left side and on the right side. The slide serrations will give me a little extra purchase on the pistol to make sure I can pull it back. So I'll take my firing grip, slightly altered, push up on the slide lock, again up meaning towards the top of the slide, grab a hold of the slide by the serrations, and in one motion I will push with one hand, pull with the other hand, while pushing up on the slide lock, and that will lock the slide back. Option number 2 is just a little bit easier to do to clear your pistol. What you'll do is you'll take an empty magazine, make sure there's no rounds in there, take your pistol in the firing grip, insert the magazine. At this point, making sure your trigger finger stays straight off of the trigger along the frame of the pistol itself. Make sure that you've got a good grip on it so that that grip safety is depressed. Once again, on some of the XDs, the slide will not come back unless that grip safety is depressed. At this point, you'll grab a hold of the slide, you'll take the palm heel of one hand, place it against the serrations on one side, take the finger touch pads, place it along the serrations on the right side. At this point, what you'll do is you'll push and pull at the same time. You'll take the hand that's got the firing grip on the pistol, you'll push in that direction. At the same time, the hand that's gripping the slide will pull in the opposite direction. So you get a scissors action going. Pull back, and what will happen is that the magazine follower will actually push that slide lock up, allowing that slide to be locked back. You still need to remove the magazine, set that off to the side, and you still want to do a physical and visual inspection of the chamber as well as the magazine to make sure that there is not a round either in the chamber itself or in the magazine well. I'll use an orange training round. Once again, this is just plastic. I'll place it in the chamber. You want to make sure that this is not something you see. If you see anything at all except for emptiness in the chamber, you know your pistol is not cleared. You want to make sure that it is cleared. You can refer to your owner's manual or go back, hit the rewind button on this video, and make sure that your pistol is in fact clear. To disassemble a pistol, once you've made sure that it's not loaded, there's nothing in the chamber, and there's no magazine in the magazine well, is rotate the takedown lever 90 degrees. This is a little counterintuitive in terms of which way you're going to turn it. You want to rotate it so that the front portion of that lever rotates upwards 90 degrees. At that point, you're going to take your grip back in the pistol, again keeping your trigger finger straight, grab a hold of the slide, Check one last time to make sure that there's nothing either in the chamber or in the magazine well. Pull back, release the slide forward. At this point, you'll need to pull the trigger to allow the slide to release. Make sure that the pistol is pointed in a safe direction. Pull the trigger. Then you can complete removal of the slide from the frame. Set the frame down. You'll remove the recoil spring and guide rod. Set that off to the side. Then the barrel will be removed as well. You can push up a little bit, down a little bit on that barrel to help you remove it. Slide it out, place it off to the side, and the slide itself. To clean the pistol, what I like to do is start out with the slide. I'll take the slide, take my toothbrush, dip it in my solvent, shake off the excess, blot off any extra from there, and I'll start scrubbing the interior of the slide. I'll make sure I get all three sides, as well as the breech face. The breech face will be the portion that the firing pin actually sticks out of, as well as underneath the extractor. The extractor, you can see part of it on the outside here, and if you look underneath, there'll be a small hook that comes along the right side of that slide. So I'll take my toothbrush and make sure I get underneath there. Make sure that's completely clean, and take a Q-tip, dip it in the solvent, wringing out the excess. I'll run it along the slide rails. The slide rails are going to be located here and here. They run the entire length of the slide. That's what allows the slide and the frame to mate up. Take a Q-tip, run along the inside, run it along the inside of the other side as well. I'll set the slide off to the side, oriented so that any excess solvent will drain out. That way, I'll move on to the frame next, using the same process. I'll take that toothbrush, scrub out the interior of it, and I may spend a little more time, depending on how dirty your pistol is, how many rounds you fired, how long it's been since the last time you fired it. I may spend a little more time on it than this. This is fairly clean, so I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time cleaning it. Follow the same process though. Toothbrush first, then Q-tip with the excess solvent wrung out. I'll rotate that takedown lever, pardon me, back into the down position so I can get access to the bottom of that side of the slide. Run it along one side, run along the other, and do that for both sides. You can see a little bit of the residue that's built up on that, so it could stand the cleaning. I'll also set that off to the side, once again oriented so that any excess solvent drains out of it. Move on to the barrel next. Scrub the outside. And make sure I get all sides. It's usually not too much buildup on the barrel itself, at least on the exterior of it. I'll pay a little extra attention to the feed ramp itself. The feed ramp is going to be the portion where the bullet rides from the magazine up into the chamber, and if you take a look at the training round, this is where the bullet will actually sit inside of the chamber in the gun once it's loaded. Remove that and set that off to the side, and again I'll take my toothbrush and work that feed ramp. Once I'm done with that, I'll take one of my cleaning patches specific for the caliber, along with my cleaning rod and slotted jag. Insert that in place. Dip that in the solvent. Wring out any excess. And I'll run that through the barrel once or twice. With the solvent sit in there, I'll set the barrel off to the side. Remove the patch. Change out the slotted jag because I will be using the bore brush next. Set that off to the side. Then I'll take my recoil spring assembly. I'll take my rag and just wipe that off. I don't spend an inordinate amount of time on the recoil spring assembly. It's got fairly large tolerances, so there's not really a whole lot that will cause you problems with it. I will take a look at it just to make sure there's nothing irregular with it. There's nothing, no foreign debris, nothing that looks out of the ordinary for it. I'll set that back off to the side. I'll take my brush, dip it in the solvent, get rid of any excess, blot it off, and I'll run it through the barrel. What I'll do is I'll allow it to go completely through the barrel. You can use a nylon brush or a brass brush, either one works. Depending on how dirty it is will kind of dictate how many times I run it through the barrel. After that, I will take a clean patch, run it through, and it's got a little bit of residue on it, but not much. It's actually fairly clean. I'll go dry, and then wet. And again, this is fairly clean, so there's not really much residue on there. And I'll follow it up with a dry patch as being the last one. And then I run it through a second time, or not. Set that off in the trash. I'll take my rag and I'll wipe down the outside of the barrel. Make sure the feed ramp is clean. Once I've wiped off the larger surface areas, what I'll do is I'll take a clean Q-tip and I'll run it in all the smaller nooks and crannies that I'm not able to reach with that rag. Make sure that's fairly clean. I'm not looking for perfect. What I'm looking for is good. So there's a little bit of residue left on there, but not in inordinate amount. Set the barrel off to the side. Then I'll go back to the slide, which was the first piece I started on. Again, follow the same process. Take that rag, wipe off the larger surface areas. And I'll set the solvent off to the side so I'm done with it. And I'll follow the same process. Take the Q-tip, go in after the smaller areas, including the rails on either side, the entire length, to make sure that there's no extreme buildup of residue there. If it is dirtier than what I thought, I'll obviously go back, hit it with a brush again, and make sure that it's completely clean. Make sure I get the breech face as well. Get all three sides of the forward end of the slide. And I'm seeing a couple of spots that I missed, so I'll just make sure those are taken care of. Set that off to the side. I'll move on to the slide next. And again, exact same process. Taking that rag, wiping off the larger surface areas. Once I've gotten all the big areas, including the magazine well, I'll go back with the Q-tip and get the smaller areas. One of the things you do want to make sure you are aware of or cautious of is making sure that there's no residual fibers from the Q-tip that get caught anywhere in the slide or the frame. If that happens, obviously you want to make sure you get that cleared out before you try to reassemble it. And go over the forward end of the frame as well, underneath the frame rails. And set that off to the side. So that'll take care of the cleaning portion. Second to the last step will be lubrication. And again, what I'll do is I'll start out with the slide. What I like doing is, on both of the slide rails, I'll take a drop of lubricant and I'll put a drop on one side, then the other side. Wipe off any excess that may have missed the slides. Set that off to the side. And what I'll do is I'll put it in orientation so that the lube will run down both sides. So I'll set it like this, but off to the side, and get to work on the barrel next. What I'll do is I'll take a little bit of lube, I'll put it on the Q-tip, and what I'm looking for here, I don't want the Q-tip sopping wet. I don't need the pistol dripping with lubricant. by the same token, I don't need just a bare minimum of it. I want to kind of strike a balance between the two. So I want it lubricated, but not overly lubricated. Run it along the outside of the barrel here, and in some of the places you can see where there's some silverish gray metal working its way, being exposed through some of the finish. Those are some of the contact points between the barrel and the slide. You want to make sure you hit some lube on those areas underneath here, and that'll do it for the barrel. I'll set that off to the side, and with the slide, what I'll do is I'll just run a little bit of lube under the rails, because I've already lubricated the slide rail itself, so I don't need an inordinate amount there. And what I'll do under the rear part of the slide is I'll look for some of the contact points of where the trigger bar is coming in contact with the frame, and I'll add a drop of lube so I can get a little better light on here along the back portion of the frame here, in between the rail and the frame itself, where you can see a little bit of this silverish trigger bar showing through. Try to put a little extra light on there so you can get a better view of that. And I'll just take a drop of lube and put it down in there. And what I'll do is I'll work that trigger back and forth, putting a little bit of resistance against that trigger bar itself. Work it back and forth a few times and set that off to the side. By now, the lube should have run down the slide frame rails until it collects towards the bottom. I'll take a Q-tip and I'll just kind of sop up any excess lube on those slide rails. I'm not trying to really get down in there too much. I want some of that lube to stay there. What I'm just trying to do is make sure that any excess lube is taken care of. I'll take the same Q-tip from earlier and also work my way along the underside of the top of the slide down here. Typically the top of the barrel will come in contact with that, and you get another point of metal-to-metal contact. So make sure there's a little bit of lube on there. I'll take that rag and I'll sop up any excess lube. Not that it's going to hurt the pistol, but mostly just to make sure that my clothes don't get stained from any excess lube that comes down through there. So I've got the frame, recoil spring assembly, barrel, and slide. Reassembly of the pistol will be basically the reverse order of assembly. What I'll do is I'll take the slide, I'll point the front end of the slide back towards me. I'll take the barrel, insert the barrel, make sure that it clicks in place. You can usually feel it and hear it click in place. I'll take the recoil spring assembly. There's two ends of the recoil spring assembly. There is a thicker side and a thinner side. The thinner side will go towards the rear portion of the slide. The thicker side will go towards the front. What that's going to let happen is it'll allow that recoil spring guide rod to poke its way through that hole in the front of the slide. So when it recoils under normal operation, it'll be able to do so without any kind of problems. It does take a little bit of pressure to get this recoil spring assembly back in. As you can see, without it being compressed, it's not going to quite fit in there. So what I'll do is I'll obviously make sure this is pointed in a safe direction in case it slips, since I've been lubricating my pistol. In case it slips off my hands, it's not going to fly off and hit somebody or hit something that's fragile. I'll make sure that the front of the recoil spring assembly is oriented and it sits in the groove. So when it sits in there and you can see and feel it seat in place, not so much like this, but like that, I'll know it's in the right place. That'll give me a little bit of leverage and also provide me with some guidance, for lack of a better word, to make sure that the spring doesn't go left, right, or back out. I'll take my finger, I'll push slightly on it and allow it to seat. So once it's in place, you'll be able to see and actually feel it click in place where it needs to be. What I'll do at that point is I'll take my frame, line up the frame rails, and allow it to go forward. And at this point, what I'm going to do once again, let me back up one step and just double check to make sure that this takedown lever is in place. And this is going to rotate. Let me do this one more time so you can see a little better. So what I'll do is I'll take the front part of that lever and I'll rotate it upwards 90 degrees. So it's sitting like that. I'll make sure that's in place. Then I'll take the slide, mate it up with the rails on the frame, and allow it to go forward. At this point, you want to make sure that you do, once again, lock that slide back in place by pressing down on some models of XDs, pressing down on the grip safety and pushing up, and once again, by up I mean towards the top of the slide, pushing up on that slide lock. So I'll lock the slide back. I'll then rotate that takedown lever back down into place. I can release the slide at that point, press check the pistol, and you've reassembled your XD.